my comp for Cam Ward because of the way he plays. He reminds me of Patrick. He reminds me of Mahomes with how he can be unconventional, throw the football from all different kinds of weird angles, and then just put a bunch of horsepower on it when he needs to.
There's a ruggedness to the way Cam Ward plays that really reminds me of Josh Allen and their arm strength. And coming out, they both had similar yards per attempt and rushing yards. The athleticism of Cam Ward is very underrated, as was Josh Allen's.
Few have had a story as wild as Cam Ward. His journey to becoming the Tennessee Titans' hopeful savior is a script fit for Hollywood, leaving high school as a zero-star recruit with just one scholarship offer. He was hidden in a wing T offense at high school, but thrived on the biggest stages when eventually given the opportunity. Now, he looks set to return the Tennessee Titans to relevancy with his strong arm and endless creativity. This is how Cam Ward went from a zero-star recruit to first overall pick. Cam Ward's first taste of football action came at Columbia High School, and it didn't exactly set him up for success. Their wing T offense limited him to 1,070 yards and 7 touchdowns as a junior, before averaging just 12 pass attempts per game as a senior. Nevertheless, Ward fell in love with the sport. He believed that his abilities greatly exceeded the opportunities he was given in such a restrictive offense for a quarterback. But scouts can only judge on what they see, and at Columbia West High School, there wasn't much Cam Ward to see. So, he received a 0-star rating and minimal interest from college programs. Ward toured the summer camps to try and drum up interest from some colleges, but had little luck. It was in his final camp of the season, as somewhat of a last-ditch attempt, that he finally broke through. Incarnate Word, not exactly known for its football excellence, opened its doors to a long list of players of varying abilities in one of the final camps of the summer. When quarterbacks coach Mac Leftwich got a look at some of the missiles being thrown by the 6'2", 235-pound Cam Ward, he couldn't believe his eyes. What was a player with that much talent doing at their camp? So, Cam Ward's first college offer arrived shortly after, which was a huge source of both joy and relief. His hard work and resilience had paid off big time, overcoming the odds to receive a scholarship offer after being an overlooked wing T quarterback only months prior. Now, the real work could begin. Compared to the simplistic wing T offense, where Ward primarily handed the ball off and had just 2 reads in the passing game, wrapping his head around this new air raid offense was like learning an entirely new language. All of a sudden, he was making checks at the line of scrimmage and having to read the full field on dropbacks. A slightly delayed season due to COVID gave him a bit of extra time to wrap his head around it all. And by the time things finally kicked off in February, he had earned the starting job. His college career started with a bang, completing 68.6% of his passes for 306 yards and 4 touchdowns in the regular season opener. This triggered a 3-game win streak to open the season, with Ward tallying some insane numbers. After averaging just 12 passes per game as a high school senior, Cam Ward threw 126 pass attempts in his first 3 college games alone, surpassing his grand total from his entire final high school season. 6 touchdowns then arrived in Game 4 in a wild 75-45 loss to Nicholls, which started a run of 3 losses to close out the COVID-reduced 2020 campaign. 2,260 yards, 24 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and a 3-3 record from those 6 games vindicated Incarnate Word's decision to give the 0-star quarterback a chance, also earning Cam the Jerry Rice Award given to the top freshman in the FCS. Having only had 6 games to show what he could do though, expectations were high for what a full season might look like. And when that full season arrived in 2021, fans were treated to fireworks all year long. As a sophomore, Ward completed 65.1% of his passes for 4,648 yards, 47 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions, leading his Cardinals to a 10-3 record and the team's first ever outright conference title. Together, head coach Eric Morris and quarterback Cam Ward had transformed the Cardinals into a dominant force in the Southland Conference, meaning it was time to test their talents elsewhere. When Morris was recruited to become the new offensive coordinator of the Washington State Cougars, all eyes turned to Ward. Just 2 years prior, he had been an overlooked and unwanted quarterback, warranting a 0-star rating. Now, he was an FCS All-American second-team honoree and one of the hottest names in the transfer portal. While many college programs threw their hat into the ring, Ward only had eyes for one. He would be following Morris to Washington State. For the second time in his career, Ward thrived in his new environment. Despite playing behind 2 freshman tackles and a walk-on guard, he passed for 3,231 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. Not afraid by the upgrade in position, Cam Ward injected life into the Cougars' offense, regularly extending plays and taking risks. It was clear that the kid from Incarnate Word had an NFL arm in the making, which he utilized with flair. He proved he was more than capable of holding his own against FBS opposition when completing 77.1% of his passes for 375 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception in a 44-41 loss to Oregon, before posting 343 yards and 3 touchdowns in a win over Cal. A disappointing 137-yard, 1 interception outing against Fresno State in the LA Bowl ended the season on a sour note, but there was clearly plenty to build on. However, his beloved coach Eric Morris was on the move again, taking over the head coaching position at North Texas, meaning Ward would be playing in a new system for the first time in his college career. It was a new test for Ward, but one that he passed with flying colors. He again got off to a hot start, opening up with 4 wins on the bounce, passing for 1,393 yards, 13 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions in the process. Unfortunately, losses dominated the second half of the season to produce a 5-7 record, but Ward put some good film on tape. He saw his completion rate tick up to 66.6%, yielding a similarly improved 3,735 yards and 25 touchdowns, whilst his interceptions decreased to 7. Ward also saw career highs from a rushing perspective, adding 144 yards and 8 touchdowns on the ground, which were both more than his first 3 years of college ball combined. By now, Cam had delivered good quality quarterback play at both the FCS and FBS levels, giving him the option of declaring for the NFL draft. However, upon finding out he was projected to be a mid-round pick, he made a bold decision. He wasn't finished yet. For a former 0-star recruit, that kind of draft stock would usually be cause for celebration, but Ward knew he had more to offer. He wasn't content with just making it to the NFL. He wanted to rise higher on draft boards and prove his true worth. To do that, Ward needed to go somewhere he could compete. He had thrown for almost 7,000 yards at Washington State, but just a 12-13 record over those 2 years wasn't going to get it done. So, Ward once again tested the transfer portal, ending up in Miami under Mario Cristobal. The Hurricanes had improved from 5 wins in 2022 to 7 wins in 2023 under Cristobal, and were now looking to take that next leap forward. Cam Ward was the golden ticket they were after to make that happen, and the results were sensational. Now benefiting from exciting playmaking talent around him, Ward hit the ground running in 2024, completing 75.4% of his passes for 385 yards and 3 touchdowns in a season-opening win over the Florida Gators. He then led the team to 56 points against Florida A&M before tossing 5 touchdowns in a 62-0 blowout win over Ball State. The wins just kept coming for Cam and the Canes, who didn't lose a game until November when falling to Georgia Tech by 23 points to 28. Ward was wowing his new teammates on a weekly basis, showing off his elite creativity to buy time in the pocket, and somehow always finding an outlet. Whether this was by firing a dart downfield, or creatively shuffling the ball backward to a running back, Ward wasn't afraid to give it a go. In his own words, Cam Ward plays with a controlled aggression and a lot of hate in his heart. In other words, he hasn't forgotten the countless people who have overlooked him throughout his career, giving him the ultimate chip on his shoulder and encouraging him to strive for greatness. Unfortunately, a frustrating loss to Syracuse in the final week of the season removed any hopes of appearing in the ACC championship game, with the Hurricanes landing 13th in the final college football playoff rankings. As a result, there would be no playoff football for Ward, but he had significantly improved his draft stock, vindicating his decision to return for one final season. It was a brilliant campaign by the Hurricanes quarterback, shattering the program record for passing yards with 4,313 and for touchdowns with 39. For his efforts, Ward was named the ACC Player of the Year and a consensus All-American, also winning the Davey O'Brien and Manning Awards. Most importantly though, Cam had paved a route to the top spot in the 2025 NFL Draft. The earliest stages of the pre-draft process had Ward sharing the top tier with Colorado quarterback Shedeur Sanders, but the more time that analysts and fans spent grinding the tape, it became clear there was only one quarterback in contention for the first overall pick. That was, of course, Cam Ward, who joins a Tennessee Titans team who are eager to move on from a disappointing Will Levis era. This is a franchise that has been somewhat lost ever since John Robinson's controversial trade of star wideout A.J. Brown, and Cam Ward is the perfect selection to stop the slide. He is a very exciting quarterback prospect who carries himself with such high levels of confidence, born from the fact that he has forced his way into this position whilst everyone else doubted him throughout his career. He has a swagger in the pocket that has been absent in Tennessee for years, and he can absolutely back it up. He's brilliant at evading pressure and extending plays, and can contort his body to deliver passes with a high velocity from all sorts of different arm angles. He can bomb the ball deep and has a rapid, twitchy release, allowing him to fire passes into small windows. That will certainly come in handy in the NFL. He isn't as fast as Kyler Murray, but certainly shares similar traits, whilst also showing some signs of the great Ben Roethlisberger. His highlights often come from him bouncing around in the pocket, evading pressure, and then still managing to find his man downfield. And if he decides the passing option isn't there, he is more than willing to get the job done with his legs. He can be Mahomesian as a scrambler and has the toughness to get across the line. I realize that comparing him to Kyler Murray, Ben Roethlisberger, and Patrick Mahomes is a bit over the top. And whilst he is clearly not a direct comp to any of them and has a long way to go before reaching that level, there are undoubtedly signs of each of them in his game. And most importantly, Ward is a winner who has proven himself to have the clutch genes necessary to thrive in the NFL. As a Hurricane, Ward had 3 comeback victories after being down by 10 or more points in the second half, most notably a thrilling win over Cal. After falling down by 35 points to 10 in the third quarter, Ward put the team on his back and led them to 4 straight touchdown drives to close out the game. Yes, it was some of his mistakes that got them in the mess in the first place, but it says a lot about a quarterback to stay calm, regather, and deliver in the clutch like that. For Tennessee fans, there is plenty to be excited about. Ward is the perfect quarterback to make sure that Calvin Ridley's talents are maximized, and when you factor in the exciting running back stable, it's easy to get carried away. Of course, there are things that Ward needs to iron out. No prospect is ever a perfect prospect. He can sometimes drift a bit too far back in the pocket and has made some questionable plays throwing across his body that have ended in disaster, but those are all things that can be coached out of him pretty quickly. The bottom line is that this is a kid who backs himself, has all the traits you want to see in a modern day quarterback, and has shown up when the pressure is on. That is why he went first overall, and that is why he's going to save the Tennessee Titans. But how do you think Cam Ward will do in the NFL? Let us know in the comments.